Okay.
Hello, good afternoon, February 15th, 2021. What is now known as President's Day. We used to have Lincoln's birthday and Washington's birthday. Once upon a time, as historians like Ari Kaufman from either Alpha News or Aloha News, depending on whether his spell check acts up on him. But he covers Minnesota, he covers Hawaii, he covers the world. You've got breaking news right hot off the presses, right out of my backyard. Get to it, AJ.
Oh, well, about 11 minutes ago, there was a breaking news at the Lincoln Journal-Star, your hometown paper. It said, and I quote the headline with a picture of a squirrel with ice on it, Lincoln Electric System planning rolling blackouts due to extreme cold. And the idea is that it's gripping the middle of the country, as we know, from here in St. Cloud all the way down to southern Texas. And the apparently the 17-state regional transmission organization on Monday issued an emergency energy alert, signaling that its operating reserves are below required minimum. It has told its members, utilities, including Lincoln and other Nebraskas, and I'm guessing maybe up here too, to be prepared to implement controlled interruptions of service if necessary. LES announced Monday afternoon it would start shutting off power in areas of the city in 30 to 60 minute intervals.
Oh,
I'm going to check my local paper for that.
That yeah. I do not like. I remember you were flirting with 40 below a couple years ago, and you were getting alerts saying they may shut the power off at your place at any moment.
Yeah, the St. Cloud
hopefully
Times
we're able to stay on air here during this segment here. But just to give you an idea, and global warming gets argued with every cold front, literally, and you get a couple per year, and this has been way overdue. But from up and down the I-29 corridor, up and down the Great Plains states, this is historic.
2 weeks of sub-zero temperatures for much of the country, from the 4th to the 18th, roughly, you might say, would be the time frame, I'd say.
Exactly. I mean, this time last week was one thing, below, I think it was one morning it was -10. And then I looked at the forecast for this coming weekend, and like right now, well, yesterday where I am in Nebraska was about -5, but we had about 6 inches of snow. And that was the other thing. You don't get the double whammy of the snow and the bitter cold at once. Right now, it's still cloudy. It's 10 below zero. And you've got probably a similar temperature here, well, in St. Cloud, but it's supposed to be 25 below about 7 a.m. for the rush hour commute tomorrow.
Check that out. Check that dip out. You're talking, it was snow. There was snow yesterday and last night in San Antonio, Houston, Austin. It's snowing right now in Memphis and Little Rock. It's single digits, it looks like, in Little Rock and Dallas. You're below zero in Oklahoma City, in Lubbock and Amarillo and southern Kansas, of course. And even down all the way to, what's the town down there? McAllen at the bottom of Texas?
McAllen, which even goes below this map, and literally the most southern part of the United States. And I could pull that up right now.
McAllen is not only below San Diego and below Phoenix and below Orlando, but it's arguably below Miami and right around where Key West is. I mean, I've been down there, Laredo and McAllen, in January when it's been in the 50s, and that's chilly for them, but not 28, 30,
Yeah. By the way, the all-time record low for Lincoln, Nebraska is -33. And when we got 14 inches of snow a few weeks back, I said, okay, that's one thing. Just don't challenge the record low temperature. But here we are. But back to McAllen, they're in a winter storm warning right now. It is 31 degrees. Winter storm warning, wind chill warning, and a freeze warning, obviously. And it doesn't say.
And remind you though, this is a couple hundred miles.
But in Dallas and a lot of Austin and a lot of parts of Texas, they're getting what they like to call Yankee snow.
Right, and and don't forget, for our folks who are watching this who live perhaps in California or New York and don't look at maps too often in the middle of the country, McAllen is several hundred miles. Well, it's probably 400 miles south of Dallas. It's at least 150 to 200 miles south of San Antonio. This is way down below most of Mexico. If you look at a map of Mexico, and again, in central Texas, they're getting sub-zero weather, not just in Dallas and Amarillo. And I'll be going down there Thursday morning. Waited that long purposely because I'm hoping that the weather will clear.
You're taking your annual down south working vacation, hoping to escape the Minnesota chill, and you're really not. And we have, well, I would say you are looking live, but earlier this morning, that is Galveston, Texas, folks, where we usually only talk about during maybe hurricane season. I mean, that's Hurricane Alley. Yeah. It's like stay clear out of Galveston, but this is Galveston right now. And you see the palm trees and it is snow covered. Like looks like it might as well be Chicago.
Yeah, it's amazing. My friend in Houston said they lost power. They haven't seen snow in 5 or 6 years, and that's Galveston. Yeah, that's a tropical town. That's it's not quite Miami, but it's certainly Orlando level on latitude, and that's it's remarkable. It'll melt tomorrow, and when I go down there on Thursday, Friday, I'll be driving, but it'll be in the 30s by the time I get to Oklahoma and Dallas. But it's not going to warm up from Kansas to Nebraska to Minnesota much until really Friday, I think. It's going to be single digits until then, if not below zero until tomorrow and the next day. That was this morning, it looks like, your temperature. So it's warmed up maybe a couple degrees.
And looking at the map here, as everyone can see at home, Wisconsin, Chicago, the usual chill. Same with Minnesota. Here's Wausau, 15 below, Superior minus 18, minus 11 in Minneapolis.
And yet, Orlando, 88.
Wow.
So they're just missing it. They're just completely missing it.
Yes, they had weather go through Florida. Anyone who watched Daytona 500, the 24 hours of Daytona, because that's how long the rain delay was. They had weather that moved all throughout the Southeast, but it was for this time of year actually very seasonal or even warm for that area. And then the next thing I did was I looked at some of the historical low temperatures. Yeah, Dallas has made it to -3 once. Austin made it to -1. That's their all-time record. And they're going to obliterate record lows for the dates. And yeah.
That was probably in mid-January, I bet. Huh?
Right. 2 to 4 inches of snow, and Governor Abbott earlier in the weekend declared a state of an emergency for all 264 counties in the state of Texas.
A good idea, because honestly, I've been down there a lot in January, as you know, for one of my conferences, and luckily there hasn't been too much bad weather, but there was one year, I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019, where it did sleet a little bit my last day, and it was like, I love Texas, but they were not prepared. Both the drivers and the roads were not prepared for anything like that. So they just, it's a good idea. Shut it down till tomorrow afternoon, and or just, give an emergency warning out there, and everything will be fine by the time we get to Thursday, Friday, when it's in the 30s and 40s.
And not only it isn't just
Dublin had
U.S. England got it. Great Britain got it over the weekend.
So did Dublin.
Yes, there was snow all over England and Scotland and everything else. Let's see, Scotland -17 in Celsius, so that's like maybe 1 or 2 degrees above zero. So I looked at the weather charts for England, and it was at 0 or below 0 centigrade for everywhere from England, from the southern coast of Southampton up throughout the entire country. And it looked like Wisconsin is all snow covered in that. And kind of comparing Great Britain weather probably to Seattle or Vancouver, BC.
Right. I was going to say, people forget that, Seattle and London, while they're north, I mean, they're north of where we are, north of where I am, but because of the maritime around them, like Nova Scotia, they don't get
jet
snow.
stream.
The jet stream.
I guess there was the winter 1963 or whatever. They did not get that. And it was like Arctic cold, like we are used to here the whole winter, and that disrupted the whole. It became a real crisis there. And Siberia, I mean, of course it's cold in Siberia, but even by Siberia standards, there was a city there that was getting about -50 every day for the last month. I'm going, hopefully that doesn't come here. Apparently it has. So
yeah, cut through Alaska and all that. Although Alaska's warmer than here easily. Alaska might be warmer than Tulsa right now, or parts of Alaska.
That's usually how it gets. It just spills down, and Alaska will get kind of the warmer Pacific type moisture or warmth at least, and the cold sun. And a polar vortex on average about 6 times every 10 years. So maybe every other year.
Yeah, we had it 2 years ago, right?
2 years ago you had it. And all I know is, and you're ready with your Columbia Fest on, so I know that. And now, and by the way, Lincoln is now number 7 all time for snow in a season with 47 inches with a month to go. So the all-time record's 58 inches. Number 2 was just 2 years ago, and where we are, here we are hitting it again. Kind of what Wisconsin would be used to. They're getting it.
Yeah, it's about what we would.
Usually a lot of it ends up being ice here in a typical winter, but we have all kinds of other topics to get on the table. And I heard something about the impeachment vote on Saturday. Run us down. What happened?
It's a loaded question.
Define loaded question. I know it's a general question, but
run us down what happened. Look, the bottom line is you had your impeachment trial for 4 days last week. The defense rested on Friday. The Democrats originally kept saying, we're not going to call witnesses, which was interesting because witnesses could only help them, they thought. And the House managers who were running the trial for the Democrats, who did, by Democrat standards, a good job, much better, I think, than the impeachment trial of last year. They wanted witnesses, but the Senate Democrats really wanted to move on to the Biden agenda, start passing bills and start moving along, getting people confirmed. So the House was like, we want to move on. We want to move to have witnesses. That's important. This is an important situation. We invested all this time and effort. Senate didn't. They sort of convinced the Senate on Friday night to get witnesses. And then Mitch McConnell, as usual, outsmarted Chuck Schumer, and it's too hard to explain what he did. But he basically convinced the Democrats to just enter witness testimony into the record, including from a Republican congresswoman up in Washington State named Jamie Herrera Butler, who had said that Donald Trump really did incite the riots. And he was sitting there in the White House watching it and not condemning it and not telling Kevin McCarthy to condemn it, which was quite damning. But at the end, they moved forward with a vote. All 50 Democrats, as expected, voted to impeach. Not one budged. And they got 7 Republicans out of 50, which was 6 more than they got last year and 2 more than they had gotten a week or 2 ago when they moved forward with the trial. And one of them was your Senator Ben Sasse, one of only.
I know Ben Sasse, Mitt Romney, and 5 others.
Yeah, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, the 2 more liberal Republicans. Richard Burr of North Carolina, who was a surprise, though he is retiring next year. Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, also retiring next year. And Bill Cassidy, an impressive medical doctor from Louisiana, who's pretty conservative, who surprised some people as well, and has now been censored by the East Baton Rouge Parish Republican Party.
What's Bill? I've heard Bill Cassidy's name in the news lately. Kind of a brief capsule of what he's been saying.
He's a conservative guy from Louisiana. He tends to be, supportive of the president, but he's been dismayed, I think, by what happened the last month. And he's been, leaning toward possibly voting to impeach or to convict, I guess, in this case, although still surprising he did. And what's interesting about this, and not to get too into the weeds or inside baseball, as they say, but there's this movement among state parties, Arizona Republican Party, Minnesota Republican Party, Oregon Republican Party, whatever it might be, often parties that are in the minority in their state, like Oregon, Colorado, Minnesota, Virginia, or it could be the Nebraska Democratic Party, by the other hand. But they're getting more extreme, and they're very upset when a senator votes against votes against something Trump did, or votes to impeach Trump. So you saw that in Arizona, they censured the governor and former senators because they had criticized Trump, and now they call them parishes in Louisiana, but the East Baton Rouge Parish, which is the county of east of the Mississippi River,
Right.
where Baton Rouge sits, they are mad at Cassidy, so they're censoring him. It's all a political, play and hunky and
There was one on TV last week. I heard a soundbite about talking about the quote tuna tartare. I have no idea.
That's the other Louisiana.
I have no idea what tuna tartare is.
He's the best. That's Senator John Kennedy, not to be confused with the.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
He was a great Southern man. He's very intelligent. He's hilarious. He's also a constitutional scholar, and he likes to talk about how the Democrats are the elite tuna tartare party, and they don't care about the working class individuals. He's pretty funny. If any of you pull up some of his speeches from both on Fox News and during the trial for the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearings, he was very funny and interesting.
Let me see if I can find something.
While you're doing that, I'll read you what Ben Sasse said, just a part of what he said, because Ben Sasse is despised by the hardcore conservative Trumpians in your state, some of whom we know. He's also respected by the more, let's just say, traditional moderate Republicans and even some Democrats. And he said, this is not really about Donald Trump. It is really about a signal to future office holders about what kind of behavior is appropriate. After all, the old meaning, the non-political meaning of the word impeach, to impeach someone's character, is to be the last thing I'll mention that he said, the president is supposed to be the not just barely smaller king in the American system. It's supposed to be an administrative job where you faithfully execute laws. And when you're affirming the peaceful transition of power, and Article 2 branch stirs up people by sowing more distrust in that, I have a hard time coming up with anything analogous in terms of Article 2, an attack on the system. It's an unbelievably egregious attack on our system. That was actually from an interview he gave last week.
Okay.
It's worth looking up his speech. There's John Kennedy.
And I'm pulling this up cold. Let's see what he has to say here.
Line of question. You were a very aggressive fundraiser for your think tank. And that's, I'm not suggesting you did anything wrong. Please don't construe my remarks as suggesting that. But there will be a perception. I'm not saying it's reality, but as we know in government and politics, perception matters. But there will be a perception that if you took Wall Street, given the money you raised from, if you took Wall Street, turned them upside down and shook them, you'd fall out of their pockets. How are you going to deal with that? I mean, when Wall Street comes calling and you're at OMB.
Senator, at the Center for American Progress, we proposed a financial transaction.
That's Neera Tanden. She's the liberal nominee for Office of Management and Budget Director.
Many years ago.
Vociferous and
series
big, kind of a bully for people she doesn't like.
Restrict the power of Wall Street. I believe Wall Street.
You can probably move on. I don't think he's going to say anything else.
And I have said that multiple times.
I can find the tuna tartare for you.
Okay, let me interrupt you. I got to go to another subject. I appreciate your answer.
I knew there was something good at the end. That's why I'm on there.
Yeah.
I'm going to another subject. I'm out of here.
Yeah, well, that's what happens.
But
I don't know. There's a lot of clips. People can look them up. Let's move on to the COVID bill. By the way, just to mention, it's a big bill. The Democrats want to pass $2 trillion in relief. Some of it undoubtedly needed by people. Others, total ideological wish list items, like the minimum wage being raised to $15 nationally, which is absurd if you live in Casper, Wyoming, or Ogallala, Nebraska, and other environmental issues.
And I heard you say that last week on Jeff Dunitz and Ed Morrisey, and I guess
Yeah.
you're going to be a regular on that show now.
I'll be on every first Tuesday of the month at 3 p.m. Central with Ed Morrisey and whoever his co-host is that week. So thanks for mentioning that. And it's a good show. It's an hour and a half, and it's sort of like this, not too different, a little more high tech because Ed's been doing it for 10 years. But other than that, so yeah, COVID is, look, we know what's going on with COVID. The cases are down up to 40% on the 2-week average. We're immunizing people. We're up to 60 million may have gotten their first dose, or 50.
But Dr. Fossey says we gotta wear the mask until
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, it's I don't look, I try not to be too anti-Fauci or whoever, but people who have gotten 2 shots and we live in, and then the cases go down, it's tough to tell them to wear the mask everywhere. If you want to wear it in close quarters or what have you, or a sporting event, but Fauci's now saying we can't open the schools until all the teachers are vaccinated, possibly, which is BS. The CDC itself said that's not true. And look, the cases are way down. We're down to 70,000 people hospitalized. The cases per day, you can help me out with this, are starting to be under 100,000.
Oh, here, I got it right here.
There you go. I'm never
I can
wrong.
expand this a little bit.
Ari never wrong.
The rolling average is,
Rolling average.
for some reason, it's, I'll get it back to it is 92,487. The last time it was that low was around November 4th.
Right. So we're out of the second wave, maybe, if you will. Of course, the vaccines are helping, but we're still not as low as we were in the glory days of the summer and early fall. I get that. And the deaths we do this every week. The deaths are very troubling that they're 3,000-4,000 still most days.
Right.
But I have to assume they're going to go down eventually because look at the cases and and the lack of hospitalizations, right?
And there's a lag time on that, obviously, and
Yeah, of course.
you're beginning to see that now with the daily deaths. And yesterday, it's kind of hard to do weekend numbers, but yesterday was 92,000. The Sunday before was 116,000. And
Cases.
it's been that way for the last several. You go with a corresponding Wednesday from one Wednesday to the next from the last 4 weeks. And you can see from January 10th, we're going down from 250,000. We it's down by almost 2/3 in the last.
Yeah, it's
I realize
50% down.
there's still a long ways to go, but you're hearing some of this like masks are just going to be a way of life. Social distancing is just going to be a way of life going forward. And I mentioned the car race yesterday only because there was supposed to be 30,000 there, and they were fearing that to be a quote super spreader event. Well, you know what? I kind of want to see these test cases, whether it's 25,000 at the Super Bowl or 30,000 at the Daytona race. And I guess after it rained, then they all were wound up crammed into the
lobby
under the stands.
Well, look, I'm not disagreeing that 30,000 people cramped in is not the best thing in the world, but it's always ideological. You're talking NASCAR in Florida. That's like the 2 biggest enemies of the elite liberal technocrat. The state of Florida right now under Republican governor, and NASCAR. The Super Bowl was also in Florida, and it was and the NFL. Even though I dislike the NFL, football is still considered sort of a center-right sport politically in terms of like the fans, especially college football. Right. But you won't see the same criticism of basketball or soccer, baseball. Hard to say. But I think some of it's ideological. Obviously, you look at college basketball, there's fans in Omaha, there's fans in Indianapolis, there's fans in the SEC all year, there's fans in most of the Big 12. And then you start looking at the Pac-12, which doesn't even allow a pin drop inside the arena.
I don't think they allow flies inside the arenas.
And the Big East, outside of Omaha and Indianapolis, once you get to the I-95 Northeast corridor, they're playing in gyms that are reserved for middle school, basically, 1,200 seats and no one there but the PA guy and the players and the refs and such.
Yeah, and it's basically down, you watch European soccer, they're playing, their doors are still closed. So it's a worldwide thing. Australian Open, they shut it down. When they get like 6
Yeah.
cases of COVID in Melbourne, Australia, the state of Victoria is shut down. So I
Which is
don't know what
debatable.
they do when
No.
they, if they're ever going to allow flights from the United States. I'd love to know how to get into Australia right now, because it must be next to impossible.
Are they going to allow fans at the NCAA basketball tournament throughout Indiana?
Well, there have been fans allowed in other events in Indiana. I know NFL. And
That's why I assume the answer is yes. I assume the answer will be yes. I don't know about on the campus of, they're going to have two of the, it's going to be Butler, where they allow fans in downtown Indianapolis, of course, but then you also have the arenas at Purdue and West Lafayette and Indiana University and Bloomington, which are very liberal college towns, especially Bloomington, where they haven't had fans all year. So will it just be friends and family? Will they have to do a urine sample or a screening before they go in, or what, you know?
Oh, and by the way, on NASCAR, they are actually not doing daily tests on the drivers or crew personnel. Now, the fans, they had to undergo a health screening and a temperature check upon passing through the gates. So, you know, the typical someone at the door, are you experiencing a cough today? Have increased, having feeling a temperature, anything like that? And, you know, that typical stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, as Aaron Rodgers said when, you know, he had to record his MVP speech, but he said, well, you know, I had 180 days of having the inside of my nose, you know, swabbed.
Yeah.
And like every player in every professional sport, and who knows how many other professions are going through all this overkill right now. Now,
Well, let's move on to the schools on that.
and I will get to the schools, but the question I've been wanting to
Yes.
ask you is, what is going on or not going on with the seasonal flu this year?
Yeah, that's more your topic. You've mentioned that a lot. I mean, it's non-existent because it's being counted as COVID or what have you, or I don't know. I mean, you're more versed in that than I am. You've mentioned that more than I have.
Maybe that is part of the good in the face. I have to admit,
possible.
You know, I hate, you know, I feel like I'm running around like a Muslim or something, having to wear this all the time. You know, it's dictatorship. It's draconian. It's
people who think
nasty.
who know better than you. Remember.
Well, yeah, of course. And we'll have my mayor here in Lincoln. They have her sign language interpreter. You know, because everyone has to have them. But you know, I've got news. There would be in a normal year maybe 70,000 at a playoff game at Lambeau Field or some other cold weather site.
Right.
We'll have several thousand that will come down with the flu from attending that game and being in close proximity to thousands of other people and tailgating and everything else.
Right. Not to mention the concerts, the parties, and all
that.
that.
In a post-COVID world, but are they going to allow it now, or is this the new norm and we're only going to allow 20,000 people inside?
Yeah, no, the teams are not going to lose that kind of money, but I do wonder about concerts are going to have to be different, at least for a while. They're going to have sort of separate pods or what have you. And some sporting events, you know, like we're going to the hockey game in Wichita next Sunday. You know, there, I think it says enter at gate, whatever. You may only be able to enter at a certain gate, right, and you may be confined to that area. You got to get your hot dog here and your bathroom's there, but you can't go around to see your friend in section D because you may give him COVID or whatever.
Yes. You know, I don't even know what the concessions are. I haven't really done concessions. You know, I haven't been to sports events.
Well, the Rocks had concessions and it was pretty normal.
Yeah, they had, but you know, it's only a few thousand there, and
right,
you're getting your hat after the strikeout batter struck out. Got your hat for half price. Got my hat. I had 2 strikes. I went to run to get my hat.
That was good stuff.
I had to beat the crowd. But
the teachers, real quick, not real quick, but
yeah,
I want to.
Well, yeah, let's segue into the teachers, because what's it been year now? A year? Wow, a solid year.
Well, some of them ended on like March 5th and 6th, so we're getting very close to a year.
Yeah, we're getting to that magic. It was declared a pandemic on March 11th, 2000.
But some of the schools broke away 4 or 5 days earlier than that
Yes.
because they knew they wanted to get set up for online, whatever, or spring break or whatever.
And there was stuff being canceled, like South by Southwest,
Yeah.
a tennis tournament they had in
Yeah.
Indian Wells.
Indian
St.
Wells,
Vincent
right?
earlier
That's
that
California.
week, which is a 2-week thing. It's kind of like a Grand Slam event. But and I know San Francisco was wanting to empty out all the arenas and that already. And LeBron James was saying, okay, you can't do it. That's impossible. It's a different world now.
It's
Different world now, pal.
look, it's one thing. Let me say a couple things on this. Schools are open at least a couple days a week in most of the country. Nebraska, Texas, Florida, parts of Minnesota, most of Minnesota, Idaho, wherever.
Right.
But the places that get the national media's attention, and rightfully so, California, the entire state, Chicago, which is different than the rest of Illinois, where it is open in downstate Illinois. I have our friend David Torbert told me that, former Newslink employee.
Yep.
Um,
What are you talking about?
Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, which is basically Washington, D.C. now, Maryland, which is basically Washington, D.C., and of course, Boston, New York City, Philadelphia. On the other hand, schools are open in suburban Long Island, New York. They're open in suburban areas of even liberal states, like in Arizona, Colorado. So there's no difference, by the way. Yes, some schools are older and they're going to talk about ventilation systems. That's the new word to hear, the ventilation system. Well, there's plenty of new schools, by the way, who have great ventilation that aren't opening either, by the way, in Northern Virginia. But I think I read in Jim Garrity, National Review, who's been on this. He's a conservative guy, but he was sounding the alarm bells about COVID before anyone else was back in last January. But he's also taken the teachers to task. And in his article today, he just simply wrote, claims that returning to the classroom amounts to a death sentence for teachers are anti-science scaremongering. Teachers are being asked to step into a classroom, masked, to teach students, masked, 3 to 6 feet away, to avoid a virus they have a roughly 99% survival rate for, with few or no recorded cases of student-to-teacher transmission. It is not akin to giving CPR to Ebola patients.
Yeah, it's
amazing. The guy at the grocery store has to go in, and the auto mechanic, and everyone has to go in. But
there was a time where you went to school or the workplace or whatever. We've been in workplaces where they have like CPR classes, and they used to have things on the wall on saying what to do if somebody collapses and that. Yeah. And I guess it's just do CPR because the mouth-to-mouth or all the other quote artificial respiration or whatever was taught in generations prior doesn't mean a thing if you don't have a pulse. And then you can do all the training in the world, but if you have that situation that arises, then all the training that you're not going to think of that right off the top of your head. You're just going to think of the first priority on how to handle that type of situation.
But this is really, I was a teacher. I'm not now. I have friends and family who are teachers. I have friends in New York, Long Island, who are back in school, and they said it's going okay. And these are liberal, wealthy teachers. Somehow the unions are so damn strong in these states and cities that they will not budge. They have not missed a paycheck. Obviously, they never will. They're going to keep moving the goalpost. I know it sounds cliche, but they are. They could all be vaccinated. They're not going to go back. And really what they're now doing, and Biden, I know it's not a federal issue. I know it's up to the states and cities, but he's reversed course. He wanted to get the schools open. Jen Psaki wanted to get the schools open. The CDC director said, let's get them open. And then last Friday afternoon, they said, yes, we want to, but not until blank, blank, blank. And he's got NEA people that work in his Department of Education in key roles. They're now talking about the fall and beyond. And they're talking about, well, before we open, we have to talk to civil rights groups, because civil rights groups really have a say in what goes on in Fresno, California, or Fairfax, Virginia, and people's lived experiences, which is a fake term that, Sarah Peterson or Bob Bajek would use, or Brian Phillips, which is like saying my truth, a fake term. And they will not open schools until they involve all their entities, everyone involved. We are possibly entering a future where teachers will never go back to work in certain areas, as in when the year starts, let's just sit home and we'll do it through Zoom. Some teachers will go back in, but they're going to stay home if they can, and they're going to get paid. And if they ever do go back, they can leave school whenever they feel like they're in danger. 38 kids in the class, one of them has the flu. Teacher says, I'm out for the next 2 weeks. This is a very dangerous, slippery slope we're going down.
Well,
And I think
what's the
intentional.
precedent? That's the key word is, you know, I always said, I think of people I lived like 30, 40 years ago and how they were stubborn on things. I'm going like, what would this person think now?
There's a lot of things they would wonder about. We can talk
I can
about
just
with-
imagine my grandpa right now, you know, remembering stuff he said in 1970, 1980. What would he be thinking of stuff that is going, you know, or even my mom, what she would be thinking of stuff going on in the world right now. It's ridiculous.
And that goes for so many different areas, but especially to think that, you know, look, last thing on this, I'm a fan of charter schools. I'm a fan of homeschooling. If every brick and mortar school closed down and everyone was teaching in, you know, different kinds of, I think that might be a good thing, you know, but the teachers are, you know, they're right. They're digging their own graves in some ways. Once more and more parents figure out that their kids don't need to go to the old factory down the street to get schooled, you know, they're going to pull them out. They're going to set, private schools are all open. Charter schools are mostly open. Home schools are open. You don't need to go to, you know, Thomas Edison Elementary School to get your fourth grade education.
Dr. Biden, she's an educator, isn't she?
Oh God, she decorated the lawn on Friday with hearts and love and compassion. It's unbelievable. The virtue signaling from a 70-year-old woman. It was so tacky. And the media ate it up.
Right. And what cities are the worst right now as far as teacher unions and just kids having difficulty getting back to school?
Oh, I think you
Off the
probably,
top
yeah.
of your head.
Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston, New York City to some degree. They have some weird rule there where I don't think they're able to strike. So they've actually gone back in some respects. Fairfax County, Virginia. That is the area right across the Potomac River from DC, right. The wealthiest county in America and the strongest teachers union, apparently. They are apparently the worst from what I keep reading. And I hear a lot about it because a lot of the media live there and a lot of them have kids in schools. And even the liberal parents are not thrilled with what's going on there. And DC, of course, DC schools are possibly the worst.
And then segue into, and this is what kind of the number one story on Friday. It's kind of dropped off a little bit, but explain in a nutshell the Lincoln Project and what their owner, what their founder is standing accused of. And you did an article on that.
Can you pull up my article? That might be the
in fact, I'll do that right now.
That might be the easiest way to do it.
We can go from there. So
I don't know. The best way would be to go to A.J. Kaufman Lincoln Project. I don't know if that'll get you there or not.
Yeah, we'll just go to Aloha News.
May as well be Aloha with some of this, the lack of speed in which they get articles back, you know, up the.
No, don't rip the.
They're not watching. Don't worry.
I'm sure they're not, but
they might watch me on other podcasts, but not on this one. And I hope it probably should still be. Well, my article that I may or may not have sent you yet about the 3 worst presidents is at the top there.
Oh, wow. So, and Jimmy Carter, spoiler alert.
Let's save that for the end if we need to get to that. But there's the Lincoln Project.
Who has 40 years as the next president. He does have that going for him. But,
right. You know what? It's under news. It's under national news. It's not under. Go to my name. That's the easiest way.
Yeah, I just find all of your stuff. Just go to Alpha A.J. Kaufman.
Yeah,
you can
there
find
it is. Lincoln
dozens
Project.
Of stories.
Yeah, 3 or 4, sometimes 5 per week, folks. So the Lincoln Project, as you know, was the original and the most powerful anti-Trump group around. They raised tens of millions, almost $100 million from mostly Democrats, obviously, but some Republicans to try to oust Trump, and they were successful. But the problem was they had a guy running it who turned out to be, I don't know how to say it,
I'm really uncomfortable talking about the pedophile.
Right, I'm not getting into the details, but he was sending explicit messages to men and some boys under 18. So he resigned on Thursday or Friday. And the organization, which had been told about this last summer or warned about it, ignored it. And the co-founder, Steve Schmidt, denied it and gave a statement. And then, of course, if you scroll down a little more, he resigned on Friday night because, Friday evening on Lincoln's birthday, no less, he resigned from the organization. They've been around for a little over a year. Look at that, $100 million almost, but they did not use most of it for advertising. It was grift, as they say. They were stealing money basically from people. Yeah, they wanted Trump to lose.
So, I mean, where was most of their money going to in your?
It was going to, as it says right there, exorbitant consulting fees collected by members of the group. So to their pockets, basically. And
it had to be exorbitant.
And Noah Rothman, who works for Commentary Magazine, I happened to listen to their podcast on Friday, and I typed this up because they don't have a transcript, but he had a good rant, and he had said he had not spoken about Lincoln Project for about a year. And Noah is not a Trump supporter, but he is a conservative, and he's not a Trump hater either. So he could have joined Lincoln Project, but he didn't. And he says the true colors were available to anyone remotely interested. They raised tens of millions of dollars from grassroots donors, went into their pockets. They were all over media telling Democrat voters what they wanted to hear. The members cashed checks from Steve Bannon, who's a strange guy in his own right. They were unceremoniously defenestrated from Republican campaigns in the past, actually. And they were, for not being myopically fixated on Trump's evil works, they accused me being Rothman in this case, of abetting right-wing terrorists. The rhetoric always went to the next level because that's what lined Steve Schmidt's pockets and made him a star on MSNBC and CNN too. And those of us who spoke out about it didn't get the big bucks, but we maintained our principles, LES.
Not Lincoln Electrical System. So that's that last paragraph here that we are talking about.
So they're done. They're done, the Lincoln Project. And all that's left in the anti-Trump conservative world are your friends at the Bulwark.
And now I only listen to it because I listened to Sykes a little bit. I guess he doesn't do a show in Milwaukee. It's another guy named Jeff Wagner. He does a show in Minneapolis. I don't know if you follow him or not, but I listened to, he was destroying the likes of Kristi Noem last week, along with Senator Ron Johnson for being too Trumpian. And then here's what I'm going to say. You say what you want about QAnon. And I know that people pretend they don't know what it is. And they make some pretty wild conspiracy batshit claims. But here we have what has been allegated against the Lincoln Project. It's showing that some of what's coming out of the QAnon camp, at least to a small extent, is somewhat accurate. It's like you used to, in an earlier generation, you saw the National Enquirer on the grocery store shelves in the checkout lane.
Right.
And most of it was fabricated, but some of it was fact, and they were just fabricated.
John Edwards, they broke the John Edwards scandal. The former vice presidential and presidential candidate, John Edwards, who had an affair with one of his staffers while his wife was dying of cancer. National Enquirer broke that story.
Right.
No one else did.
And that's, in their era, that's what you saw it at the front page. And then there was something really juicy. Of course, it's in the middle, but you try to rip it open and your turn comes up by that time. Just pay the $2 for the magazine. That's what you're supposed to do. But I wanted to get to the Bulwark and what aired on there on Friday in particular. And I guess he had... Sykes also did a emergency Saturday edition to cover the impeachment, or he was glad that at least 57 or 58 voted for it. He thought that was smart. My takeaway was, what the heck is it going to take to ever get a president
67
literally get away with murder to be ousted? And that's kind of a scary prospect.
Yeah.
So,
And it's also a bad precedent because Lindsey Graham, who I generally like, says, well, we can impeach Kamala Harris in 2 years and we take back the House. Yeah, she's a horrible person and she should be removed, but don't. It's not a good precedent.
Okay. Now, this is a show that aired Friday, and it was somebody named Peter Hamby, who is a contributor to Vanity Fair, CNN, on the board
The
at the show.
Bulwark, and
Somewhere
I'm
at
not as much
Harvard.
against the Bulwark, but they seem to have almost solely liberal guests, and maybe that's because no conservatives will go on. But they seem to have every liberal person on, but never anyone from even Commentary or National Review or some of these more.
Well, he claims to
We shouldn't
be
have followed
he
him. We
claims
shouldn't
to
have
be
listened to him.
Southern.
Where's Nikki Haley's
Date on all of this,
stick?
Here we go.
with him saying that the sky is purple and trying to convince people that the sky.
Now
is
listen to
purple.
this.
And it's quite frankly, it's not a great look for Haley.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. Real quick though, Charlie, what do you think about Kristi Noem running as the hotter, Trumpier real American governor? Because you live in real America.
Well, no, we're not South Dakota here. I don't know whether anybody even knows her here, but it is interesting that that's the way these people think. These people think about it. I don't know. I would think if so many people weren't dying in South Dakota of coronavirus, it would be more plausible. But I don't know. But it is interesting that that is the formula, right? That hotter, Trumpier, real American governor.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, like on Fox News, like she would run these tourism commercials for South Dakota constantly, not political. It'd be like, but it looked like a political ad. There'd be these gleaming shots of like a bucolic, South Dakota prairie, and then it would end with Kristi Noem being like, "I'm South Dakota's Kristi Noem. Like, come see us." And like, it's like if you're just a grandma watching Fox News, like all of a sudden, Kristi Noem
that's right.
has a name ID that's like based on nothing other than, South Dakota looks nice and she looks nice, and she's not.
I would never underestimate that. I think this is the one thing that I think political wonks tend to undervalue, which is, what are those voters seeing on television every night in their living room? And looks matter. And I'm sorry. And also identity and celebrity do matter a lot more than policy substance. I mean,
So, your takeaways from those couple sound bites.
Well, I looked up Peter Hamby. I really hadn't heard much about him. He's worked for CNN. He's younger than I am. He's about 39, looks like maybe. He's not a moderate. He's a liberal guy, both in schools and people he's worked for. I don't know look, is anyone going to deny that an attractive 48-year-old female governor of South Dakota is going to appeal to people? I mean, politics is a lot of it's about being attractive. Nikki Haley's
How old is, I thought she was like 40, early 40s
Who?
maybe?
Who's this?
Kristi Noem.
No, she's older. She looks younger. She's old. She's got daughters who are adults. I mean, she got kids.
Yeah, you're right.
But look, they're still living in 8 months ago when South Dakota was having problems. I mean, South Dakota, first of all, rightly or wrongly, they shut nothing down. So the fact that they're doing as well or better than anywhere without shutting things down is pretty impressive. They have 1,400 deaths in South Dakota. I know the state only has 900,000 people. That's still very low percentage-wise by my math. By my math, Minnesota has 6,600 deaths in a population of 5.6 million. That's much higher than South Dakota. So the guy has got his numbers wrong.
We can pick on Wisconsin from about 3 months ago if Charlie Sykes wants to go there.
They're wrong. And the vaccines there are going well. Last I checked, the top states in vaccinations, this is not numbers because they're smaller states, but per capita were the Dakotas, West Virginia, and a couple others. So I don't know what they don't like that she's a Republican, that she likes Trump. Okay. She is a fan of the president. She's also a governor. So she doesn't deal with Washington as much, but she was a congresswoman before. But I think there's some envy. I think they'd rather she be pictured as a Republican because they can picture her as like Sarah Palin or something rather than Nikki Haley or Liz Cheney or whoever else. But I think they're barking up the wrong tree. And she is very popular. And everyone in Minnesota that I know, certainly who is conservative, would rather she be our governor than Tim Walz. Different states, I realize, but I think she's done a good job. And the economy there is great. And their vaccine program, I just pulled it up. They have done 130,000 vaccines. And 56,000 have done their 2 doses. 18% have done 1 dose. That's very high, 18%.
I was seeing like only 10% who've received the 2nd dose. So I mean, they're using the arena in downtown Lincoln. They're bringing in by the thousands people.
People forget. People think that these rural states like the Dakotas and even Nebraska are easier because they have smaller populations. They're actually harder because more people live 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 miles
Right.
from the hospital. So I think what Mr. Ricketts is doing, what Noem is doing, what Berglund, the governor of North Dakota, is doing is actually even more impressive, not to mention the governor of Alaska. It should be easier in Rhode Island and Connecticut to do these things because every Tom, Dick, and Harry live within 3 miles of a hospital or 30 steps. So
Right.
I think the bulwark is wrong there. And I couldn't tell who was who, Sykes or Hansen or the other guy, Hamby sometimes, but they're lashing out. I think they can't pick on Trump as much anymore because he's sort of exited, and now they got to find.
Every show he's had the last week has been about the impeachment, about
That's
Trump.
fine. Understand.
Attention
But
to
what's he going to do starting Thursday and next Wednesday? He's going to have to pick on Marjorie Taylor Greene for their whole show.
He's done that. He's done that on a few times. He was like, I'm trying to think who he was. I don't know if it was Andrew Cuomo or who. Maybe it was Mitch McConnell. They had a guest on saying, "I'll take 100 Lorraine Bobbitt's over Mitch McConnell."
Was it a conservative?
Well, based on what Mitch McConnell says, because at least Lorraine Boebert, you know what you're going to get. Mitch McConnell, I think that's who he was, whoever the guest was making the comparison to.
I'd be interested to see who the guest was, but okay, that's interesting.
I'll have to listen to it again to be quite honest again. But your man, Governor Cuomo, was in the news this week as well.
Can you pull up? I want to pull up my article. It might be easier.
Sure.
That's a developing story. The guy was awarded Emmy Awards and books, and he was the darling of everything. And everyone who had a brain like you and me and most people we know said the guy's full of crap. The state has the most deaths per capita. He's sending people back to nursing homes to die. And yet, because he was calm and had a terrible Italian New York accent on the air every day at 11 a.m., people thought he was God, when in reality he was I don't want to say like Lucifer, but I mean, if Donald Trump had did what he did, oh my goodness. I mean, and they confessed to this. They confessed to it. It's probably under news, not opinion, I'm guessing. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so is that 4,000 shares? Eat that, Alyssa Aldrin. Eat that, Kyle Hooten. Eat 4,000 plus shares.
Yeah, you're in Kyle Hooten territory.
Eat that.
If not that, Alyssa Aldrin territory.
Aldrin only writes once a month. People wait for that.
Right.
Well,
But,
yeah, you can read it. I mean, Janice Dean. You know who did you know who Janice Dean was before Friday?
A meteorologist?
Yeah, well, she's a meteorologist, but she's also been at Fox for a while, and she's very sharp. I don't think she's a conservative. She's probably fairly apolitical. But her husband's parents both died within a few weeks of each other at a nursing home because people were sent back there with COVID and they got infected. So she's been all over Cuomo for months trying to get him to admit what he did. And by golly, on Thursday afternoon, Cuomo's top aide did. And so Janice Dean was on every show on Fox. At CNN, who knows, they brought her on. You never know. But I guess you could play that short clip. But she basically is upset, rightfully so. And she's been correct about Cuomo the whole time.
And something else I wanted to mention Fox Business Channel.
This is the biggest bombshell
here we
that
go.
we have had so far. We had a trickling in of the numbers. We knew the numbers were much bigger than the governor was admitting. So over 15,000 residents died from getting COVID in their nursing homes. They just
Look at his eyes.
Over 9,000 infected patients.
It's like the
in
guy that
nursing
used to
homes.
coach the
And now
Jets.
the biggest bombshell coming from the New York Post that his secretary, Melissa DeRosa, admitted that they covered it all up.
And I don't think you can overstate the tragedy of this. After you tweeted about your in-laws, I noticed it was a kind of mini trend that the husband would die on the Tuesday and the wife would die on the Friday, and someone such as yourself has to have that terrible thing where you've got to explain to your kid that grandma's died, and then a few days later that grandpa's died. And yet, we've got all these restrictions on restaurants, on every other aspect of life, and the people who were most vulnerable, Andrew Cuomo, failed to protect on an horrific scale.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just him. There were other governors, other Democratic governors that did the same thing, putting COVID positive patients into nursing homes. Newsom, Whitmer, Wolf, and Murphy and Cuomo.
Right.
Oh, your
5 of them
favorites.
Right.
put COVID positive
the
patients
article.
into nursing homes.
Yeah, let's be bipartisan and throw in that so-called Republican in Massachusetts.
Oh, look at Cuomo.
too, because he did that as well for a while. I mean, he became a hero to the left in this country, Cuomo, and he still thinks this can bounce off him.
It can't, not now. We have an admission, and I would like to thank whoever that Democratic lawmaker was the leak yesterday that gave us that information, because I believe all of them should go to jail.
And there's the key line. Janice Dean, by the way, Canadian. Mark Stein lives near the Vermont border of Canada, though I believe his ancestry is from either Belgium or Britain. But
Okay.
anyway. So
Well, Janice Dean is on the right there.
yeah, oh, obviously, yes.
And I know, obviously, but that's who is speaking there. Yes.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. They talked about she should run for governor in New York. That'd be interesting, right?
The other news I heard from Fox Business Channel was they got rid of Lou Dobbs about a week ago. And I didn't even know that he was still alive, to be quite honest. I hear what I hear is, and maybe this is from the Bulwark, is that Fox Business Channel has become where the harder to the more rightish viewpoints come from than the Fox News Channel. Now, I don't know. You obviously watch both.
Yes and no. I mean, it is a business channel first and foremost, so it's not going to be as political as Fox News. Lou Dobbs is definitely the most pro-Trump person probably in media. Like
Right.
he wrote a book called like God Bless Trump or The Trump Century or something.
Well, in history.
Right. And which is funny because Lou Dobbs historically worked at CNN. He was sort of a libertarian. But whatever. He got let go because he was promoting conspiracy theories and Fox was getting sued by the Dominion Software and other people because of that. It's not just him. I think they're suing Giuliani and someone else, Sidney Powell, the lawyer. So, and Dobbs, I don't know how his ratings are. He has a cult following, I'm sure. But outside of him on Fox Business, Kennedy from MTV, the woman about 50, she has a show that's pretty funny. She's a libertarian. She's not a Trump person.
The Kennedy honestly, that was on MTV way back when.
Yeah, she's very, very smart, very clever lady. She's been on Fox for quite a while. Has a show.
I remember her from like the 80s.
You'd like it. It's 7 p.m. Central every night, every weeknight. Very funny lady, very clever. Anyway, so Dobbs is gone, but no, I don't think so because Fox News still has, and they're enlarging their pro-Trump prime time, if you will. They've always had for the last 3 or 4 years Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and Sean Hannity. All three are 100% pro-Trump people. Little difference in their presentations. But now they're adding a show before Tucker Carlson that's going to be hosted by that guy, Mark Stein, or someone similar who's very pro-Trump. And after Ingraham, which would be 10 p.m. Central, they're bringing on my friend Greg Gutfeld, who's a very talented guy, but is very, very pro-Trump. Whereas in that spot, they used to have, or they still do have a news show hosted by Shannon Bream, who's neutral. So they're going 5 hours in a row of pro-Trump on Fox primetime now. So I don't know. I think some of the Trump people, and I know some of you might be watching, I think Fox is extremely pro-Trump. And I think if you're looking to OAN and Newsmax, that's your choice. But I don't think Fox is being anti-Trump. They have a news
Even
team.
Newsmax won't. You saw the thing with Mike Lindell. They canceled him right on the air. I think Lindell wound up on another show on Newsmax.
OAN,
they made up, and he came back on later that night. But you go to now. Bill Work, Sykes is worried that Trump is going to be running again in 2024, or his son, or his in-law, and one of them is going to win the presidency. And I don't see it.
It's tough.
A long ways away.
Long ways away. I don't deny. Look, he's got 3 kids, and he's got his son Eric's wife Laura, who are all interested in being in politics. Clearly, that's 4 people. Will one of them challenge Marco Rubio in Florida? Maybe. Will one of them run for Senate from New York, North Carolina, Georgia, wherever they wind up living, sure. And if Trump doesn't run, he's going to have a big role if he's still alive and well in, choosing his successor, if you will, to run for president, because he's not going to endorse the mainstream candidate. It's going to be someone way out there or a celebrity or his son or what have you. So we'll see.
Well, it's going on a month now, and I haven't heard anything from Mar-a-Lago. I mean, Donald's been AWOL. I mean, I know they took away his Twitter toy, but he could start his own website.
Sure.
They censored Alex Jones, but they know where to get it. His fans know where to get his material. Myself included.
Absolutely.
I'll listen to some of his stuff. It's like what I said with the National Enquirer. You may not agree with everything that Alex Jones says. If you want to talk about Sandy Hook and some stuff, but there was some stuff that, like the pandemic and Alex Jones said to be careful about 10 years ago, what might happen to this country, and it came exactly to pass. There's some things Alex Jones and others have hit right on the head.
Sure. I mean, that's why, you could be conspiratorial and annoying and occasionally even dangerous, but you're going to get a few things right along the way. So it's important not to ignore everyone, right? So should we close with something lighthearted, a little lighter, like college hockey?
Go ahead. You've got the floor. I know you're very upset about your team over the weekend. I just turned the broadcast on, and they were giving up goals left and right. I think that your beloved Huskies get good deals from their gift shop, but it's going to be another quick exit.
Well, don't be too sure of that. Look, 3 of the last 4 years they came in as a number 1 seed and got upset big time. So maybe not being a number 1 seed is going to be helpful. They're barring a major collapse, they're going to be in the tournament. They are 13-8 with just 3 regular season games left. 1 special game against Colorado College next weekend, making up for the fact they didn't play in Omaha. So CC has to travel all the way to here, and I think they're playing Duluth the day before. And then they close, St. Cloud State closes with Duluth, home and home. So then they go to the tournament, which will be in Grand Forks, and we'll see what happens. But St. Cloud State is ranked 6 in the new poll. Your Wisconsin Badgers are ranked 5, which is pretty interesting.
And who is the favorite for the Hobie Baker Award? The consensus favorite.
Your guy. I can forget his name, but
Caulfield.
Thank you.
He's drafted by the Canes, if I'm thinking the same guy. I think he's got a brother too.
And they had a star player last year that left after 1 year, Wisconsin, Turquette.
Okay.
So look, you look at the poll right now. You've got Boston College is number 1, which is it's really hard to judge because the teams aren't playing. They're not playing interconference. They're only playing within their conference.
Who else is there out east? I mean,
I don't know. After Boston College,
out east. I follow your neck of the woods.
Well, with good reason. But after Boston College, it goes North Dakota, Minnesota State, Minnesota, Wisconsin, St. Cloud, Michigan, Duluth, Omaha. Only 1 Eastern team in the top 10. Right. Then you get down to BU and Quinnipiac so you still may see 5 teams, maybe 6 from the East in the field of 16. But of the 1 and 2 seeds, it may be all Midwest with the exception of Boston College. And I think North Dakota, frankly, should be number 1 right now. They play a tougher schedule than BC.
Dave Starman does the NCHC package, and he's broadcasting remotely from New Jersey. So he's an East Coast. He's an East Coaster.
Yeah.
But he's talking more about he knows what's in
everything.
NCHC and what's in his part of the country.
I would say this. You're going to have to find out. It's weird because there's no pairwise because they're only playing within their conference. But the point is, are they going to play in Loveland, Colorado and Fargo, the regionals, like they were supposed to last year in their schedule? They haven't decided. They haven't done what basketball's done and moved everything to 1 location. It's a smaller tournament. It's shorter.
16 teams. You think you could do that?
Yeah. The Final Four, Frozen Four is supposed to be in Pittsburgh. I would say, sure, just do it all in Pittsburgh. But Loveland got skipped last year because of COVID, so maybe they don't want to skip them again, or I don't know if they can push them back. The point is, if you look at a team like St. Cloud or Wisconsin, in a normal situation, they'd probably be a number 2 seed and sent to Fargo or Loveland. But if it's all in Pittsburgh, it might be different. But it looks like our teams, if you will wind up playing the Quinnipiacs, the Clarksons, the Bowling Greens of the world. I like our chances to get through at least 1 round.
Right. And somehow they're going to get 64 basketball teams through the greater Indianapolis area, 64 women's teams through the
Where?
greater San Antonio, Austin area.
Well, those are good
And we'll
spots.
hear more about Paige Brockers of the University of Connecticut over the next 4 years than you would ever want to know. You'll know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, I saw your picture. I'd rather focus on Kirsten Kroll or someone more interesting.
Well, that's why they rejoined the Big East, rather than it was starting to impact UConn's women's program, which is their pride and joy. And in previous years, ESPN has told us to embrace the UConn's women's basketball program as if they were Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair.
Good analogy.
I'll take Hulk Hogan. I'll take my wrestlers.
Me too.
I'll take the wrestlers. I'll take Jesse Ventura. So, any parting shots?
Oh, I think the NCAA basketball tournament will be okay in Indianapolis. It's a great city to host events. It's well organized. It's easy. Doing it up in Purdue and IU, they have to, I guess, for court coverage. That's the only part that concerns me. But they have 4 arenas in Indianapolis: Hinkle, where Butler is, Lucas Oil Stadium, Conseco Fieldhouse, which is a different name now, and the Indiana Farmers Bureau Coliseum at the fairgrounds where IUPUI plays. I think it'll be great. And the NCAA is lucky because they didn't just pick Indianapolis because the headquarters are there. The Final Four happened to be set up to be there this year. I mean, if it had been a different city, Atlanta, Dallas, New Orleans, not are quite as good.
I guess Indiana's a gambling state now, so
yeah,
that kind of runs in the hairs. The NCAA can't run from that anymore. And I don't know. I was watching a little NHL last night, and they were giving money line picks to win the Stanley Cup championship. And I don't know about talking too much about the betting. If you want to gloss over it for humor once in a while, like Al Michaels has been going to do. And I know that it looks like that marijuana legalization is going to have to wait in South Dakota, by the way, because one of Kristi Noem's executives, or one of the people that works for her, has blocked what was passed by voters back in November. So that's another story I found out over the weekend, which is of interest to some in our audience.
Yeah.
Like gambling.
Yeah, right.
The marijuana and it's an interest to some of our audience. So,
for entertainment purposes only.
Exactly. So we'll be back next week. I might fly solo on one of these episodes if I could come out with a rant or a tangent on my end. But other than that, thanks for joining again. The Hot Air at Morrisey Show. A.J. Kaufman will be a regular fixture first Tuesday of every month, and actually all of Ed Morrisey's shows are epic. So that should definitely be on your podcast list at all times. So other than that, this is Kurt Crowley on behalf of A.J. Kaufman and our entire staff here. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.